Hello my dear friends, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring one of the darkest and most emotional stories hidden behind modern American power, the story of Michelle Obama after the White House. Let's get started. After nearly a decade living inside the most powerful house in the world, Michelle Obama walked out of the White House for the final time. And suddenly, something strange happened. For the first time in years, there were no agents standing outside her bedroom door. No endless political meetings. No cameras waiting for every movement. No carefully controlled schedule planned down to the minute. It sounded like freedom. But Michelle later admitted something surprising. Part of her felt completely lost. Because when you spend years becoming one of the most recognized women on earth, what happens when the title disappears? What happens when the applause fades, the motorcades stop, and the world no longer sees you as First Lady every second of the day? And perhaps the deeper question was even more personal. Behind the perfect smile the world admired for years, who was Michelle Obama really? Long before the speeches, the best-selling books, and the global fame, Michelle Robinson grew up on the south side of Chicago inside a small apartment above her great-aunt's home. It was not a glamorous childhood. The neighborhood was filled with working-class black families trying to survive in a country that often gave them fewer opportunities than everyone else. But inside that small apartment, discipline mattered. Michelle's father, Fraser Robinson, worked for the city water plant despite battling multiple sclerosis, a disease that slowly weakened his body over time. Every morning, he forced himself to work through pain without complaining. Michelle watched him carefully as a child. She saw dignity, responsibility, quiet strength. And those lessons stayed with her forever. Her mother, Marian Robinson, brought a different kind of strength into the household. Calm, intelligent, protective. She pushed Michelle and her brother Craig toward education from an early age because she understood something important. In America, talent alone was not always enough for black children to succeed. They needed to be exceptional. Michelle absorbed that pressure deeply. She studied obsessively. She challenged herself constantly. Even as a young girl, she already carried a quiet determination to prove herself inside spaces where people did not expect her to belong. Friends later described her as brilliant, disciplined, and fiercely competitive. And beneath all of it lived another emotion. Fear. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of failing after sacrificing so much to succeed. That pressure intensified as Michelle entered elite academic institutions most people from her neighborhood could barely imagine reaching. Princeton University, then Harvard Law School. The environments were prestigious, competitive, and overwhelmingly white. Michelle often felt like she had to work twice as hard simply to prove she deserved to stand in those rooms. But she succeeded anyway. By the time she joined the prestigious Chicago law firm Sidley Austin, Michelle Robinson appeared to be living the perfect version of the American dream. Smart, successful, ambitious, stable. Her future looked carefully planned and professionally secure. Then Barack Obama walked into her life. At first, Michelle was not impressed the way people might expect. Barack was younger than her at the firm, technically assigned as a summer associate under her guidance. He was intelligent, charismatic, and unusually confident. But Michelle also thought he seemed too idealistic, too dreamy, too focused on changing the world instead of building a safe and stable career. Michelle believed in structure. Barack believed in possibility. And that difference fascinated her. The more time they spent together, the more Michelle realized Barack possessed something rare. He genuinely believed people could build a better society together. He talked about justice, hope, community, and change with a level of sincerity that felt unusual even to her. And slowly, Michelle fell in love. But somewhere deep down, she also understood a dangerous truth. Life beside Barack Obama would never be ordinary. As Barack entered politics, Michelle's world began changing rapidly. Campaigns consumed their schedules. Public attention increased. The pressure surrounding their family intensified with every election. Michelle initially struggled with parts of political life because she valued privacy, stability, and authenticity far more than political performance. But Barack's rise became unstoppable. And in 2008, America witnessed something historic. Barack Obama became the first black president in United States history. Which meant Michelle Obama became the first black First Lady. The symbolism alone was enormous. Suddenly, Michelle was no longer simply a lawyer, wife, or mother. She became a global symbol standing at the center of American politics, race, culture, and history itself. Millions admired her instantly. Millions judged her instantly too. Every detail became public conversation. Every dress. Every hairstyle. Every speech. Every facial expression. Michelle quickly realized the White House was not simply a home. It was a stage where the entire world watched constantly. One wrong comment could become a national controversy overnight. One misunderstood moment could trigger political outrage for weeks. And the pressure became exhausting. Michelle later admitted there were times she felt more like a symbol than a normal human being. Security surrounded her constantly. Privacy nearly disappeared. Even simple family moments became difficult because cameras followed everything connected to the Obama family. Meanwhile, her daughters Sasha and Malia were growing up under international attention. Imagine trying to raise children while the entire world studies them every day. Michelle carried that emotional burden constantly. She worried about protecting her daughters from politics, racism, media obsession, and the psychological pressure of living inside one of the most famous buildings on earth. While Barack focused on running the country, Michelle often focused on holding the emotional center of the family together. And the emotional cost quietly grew heavier. To the public, Michelle Obama looked calm, confident, elegant, and powerful. She inspired millions through initiatives about health, education, and military families. Her speeches became famous for their warmth and emotional honesty. Crowds adored her. Young girls looked at her as a role model. But behind the scenes, Michelle often felt deeply exhausted. Because being Michelle Obama required constant emotional control. She could not simply have a bad day in public. She could not lose her temper casually. She could not escape political attacks or racial criticism no matter how carefully she behaved. Every word carried consequences. Every appearance carried expectations. And perhaps the loneliest part was this. People constantly expected Michelle to stay strong. Few people stopped to ask whether she was tired, or overwhelmed, or emotionally drained. Over time, Michelle began understanding something many powerful public figures eventually discover. Fame creates distance between who you truly are and who the world believes you should be. The more iconic you become, the harder it becomes to simply exist as yourself. And for 8 years, Michelle Obama lived inside that reality every single day. The White House itself almost felt unreal after a while. Staff members surrounded every routine. Security monitored every movement. Schedules controlled every hour. The family's entire existence operated inside a system larger than themselves. Then one day, it ended. The Obamas stood together as Donald Trump prepared to enter the White House in January 2017. Cameras captured the final moments. The final wave. The final departure from the building that had defined nearly a decade of their lives. And then the doors closed behind them. For the last time. No more state dinners. No more presidential motorcades. No more White House staff waiting outside every room. Only silence. And inside that silence, Michelle Obama suddenly faced a question she had not fully confronted in years. Who was she now, beyond the title the world had attached to her for so long? The first morning after leaving the White House felt strangely quiet. For years, Michelle Obama had lived inside a machine that never stopped moving. Staff members, security briefings, political schedules, cameras waiting outside almost every doorway. Every hour of her life had been carefully controlled by the demands of history, politics, and global attention. And then suddenly, nothing. No official meetings. No East Wing staff. No carefully timed presidential routine waiting for her the moment she opened her eyes. Michelle later admitted that the silence felt almost surreal. At first, part of her enjoyed the freedom. She could finally open a window without security concerns. She could drive again. She could walk through her own home without dozens of people monitoring every movement. Small things most ordinary people never think about suddenly felt extraordinary to her. But freedom also created emptiness. For nearly a decade, Michelle Obama had carried one of the most visible identities in the world. Her role gave structure to every day, every decision, every responsibility. And when that role disappeared, she had to confront a difficult emotional reality many powerful public figures secretly struggle with. Who are you when the title disappears? Michelle once described leaving the White House as stepping out of an adrenaline rush that had lasted for years. While the world imagined luxury and prestige, life inside presidential power often felt emotionally exhausting and psychologically intense. And once the noise stopped, she finally had time to hear her own thoughts again. Michelle began writing. Not speeches. Not political statements. But something far more personal. Her story. The project eventually became Becoming Asterisk, the memoir that would transform Michelle Obama from former First Lady into something even larger, a deeply personal global voice millions of people emotionally connected with. And what shocked many readers was how vulnerable she allowed herself to be. Inside the book, Michelle did not present herself as perfect. She wrote about insecurity, about self-doubt, about pressure, about balancing motherhood, marriage, ambition, and public expectations while constantly feeling watched by the world. For the first time, many people felt they were meeting the real Michelle Obama. Not the polished First Lady standing beside a president. Not the carefully controlled public image. Just Michelle. A woman trying to figure herself out while history unfolded around her. That honesty resonated everywhere. Readers lined up around bookstores for hours. The memoir exploded globally. Millions of people connected deeply with her openness because Michelle spoke less like a politician and more like a human being trying to survive enormous pressure without losing herself completely. And perhaps that was the real meaning behind the title Becoming. Michelle was not presenting her life as a perfect success story with a clean ending. She was describing life as an ongoing process of growth, fear, change, and emotional evolution. A process that never truly ends. Then something unexpected happened. Michelle Obama became even more famous after leaving the White House. Most political figures slowly disappear from public attention once their time in power ends. But Michelle's influence seemed to grow larger. Her book tour sold out arenas around the world. Audiences treated her appearances almost like cultural events instead of political speeches. People were no longer only interested in Barack Obama's presidency. They were interested in Michelle herself. Soon came Netflix projects, podcasts, documentaries, interviews watched by millions. And everywhere she went, audiences responded emotionally to her presence because Michelle represented something bigger than politics now. Strength, intelligence, grace under pressure, vulnerability, survival. For many women, especially Black women, Michelle Obama became proof that it was possible to exist inside elite spaces without completely abandoning your identity. And for perhaps the first time in her life, Michelle was building a public legacy fully separate from her husband's political career. That shift mattered deeply. For years, much of the world primarily saw her as Barack Obama's wife. But after becoming asterisk, people increasingly viewed Michelle as a powerful figure in her own right, someone capable of inspiring millions without standing beside a president. And yet, even outside the White House, the pressure never fully disappeared. Because fame does not end simply because political office ends. If anything, Michelle entered a different kind of spotlight after Washington. People still analyzed her words constantly. Rumors about possible political ambitions followed her everywhere. Some Americans wanted her to run for president herself. Others criticized her for speaking too openly about race, gender, or American society. Michelle repeatedly insisted she had no desire to enter politics directly. But public expectations remained enormous. The world still expected her to be wise, strong, graceful, perfect. Even years after leaving the White House. And behind all of it, Michelle was still trying to protect the people she loved most. Her daughters were growing older. Barack himself was adjusting to life outside the presidency. Their family continued living under public attention most ordinary people could barely imagine understanding. Every appearance generated headlines. Every interview triggered online debate. There was no true escape from visibility anymore. And perhaps Michelle understood something painful by this stage of her life. Once the world turns you into a symbol, it becomes very difficult to simply be human again. Still, she kept moving forward. She focused on family, on storytelling, on mental health conversations, on encouraging younger generations to believe their voices mattered. Her public image slowly evolved from political icon into something softer, deeper, and more personal. Not a first lady. Not a campaign figure. But a woman learning how to reclaim her own identity after years spent carrying the expectations of an entire nation. And maybe that journey became the most powerful chapter of her story. At one point, Michelle Obama said, "Your story is what you have, what you will always have." Perhaps that is why becoming asterisk touched so many people around the world. Because it was never simply about politics, or fame, or even the White House itself. It was about becoming. Becoming stronger after fear. Becoming wiser after pressure. Becoming yourself again after years spent being everything the world expected you to be. Michelle Obama never presented her life as perfect. She presented it as unfinished. As a constant process of learning, changing, struggling, surviving, and growing through every chapter life forced her into. And maybe that is why millions connected with her story so deeply. Because beneath the global fame and historical symbolism, Michelle Obama reminded people of something very human. None of us ever fully arrive. We are all still becoming. Thank you for joining me on today's journey into one of history's darkest hidden stories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next mystery hidden inside history.